Welcome to SPERO DEI.
SPERO DEI is a collective of individuals on a journey,
walking together without judgment.
This is a safe place to ask questions without fear.
A safe place to have any doubt.
A safe place to reimagine beliefs.
SPERO DEI is centered on Christ.
We trust more in our relationship with God than following a list of prescribed beliefs.
Meaning it's more about attuning to God
rather than conforming to doctrinal rigidity. At SPERO DEI, we integrate body, mind, heart, and soul
to build a holistic Christian spirituality.
We are a place where mystery, experience, science, history, perennial tradition, and sensible thinking
deepens our understanding of God and the world.
It's about being spiritually whole, not about being biblically behaved.
At SPERO DEI, we value love, Christ-like love.
We think that love is the point of Christianity, period.
At SPERO DEI, all are welcome, no matter
your sexual orientation.
We are fully affirming
Your gender identity,
your ethnicity,
your social status, and your politics.
SPERO DEI, where your story finds a home.
SPERO DEI, where your story finds a home.
SPERO DEI, donde tu historia encuentra un hogar.
SPERO DEI, where your story finds a home.
What you see with your eyes closed, but if you open up your Isn't it so hard for most of us to find the kind of patience that will trust the slow, steady work of God beneath the surface, every moment working for our good? 'Cause under all the snow is something green, and hiding in the winter is the spring. I know it will take the barren field of heartbreak, little time for new rain to fall. But I will not hang my head, His banner is over me. He said that I am His poetry, and He won't waste a word. I'm gonna wait on the Lord. Yeah. Surely I've been wrong along the way, but I will not be called by my mistakes, 'cause He calls me His friend. When all I see is where I've been, I hear Him tell me where I am going. So I will not hang my head, His banner is over me. He says that I am His poetry, and He won't waste a word. No, I'm gonna wait. I'll wait on the Lord. Yeah. There's no wound that
You know, at first, we liked it, didn't we? We liked the whole idea that faith gave us all the answers. We thought that was great. So we asked the kind of questions that produced that kind of faith. Why? Because it attempted to take all our uncertainty away. It promised that it would increase our faith. I mean, wow, finally I have an answer for everything. And in just one book. And if all I do is follow it, it'll be amazing. Why? Because all the answers are right there. What do you say we trash asking those kind of questions that only lead to those kind of answers? Because for so many of us who went that route, we actually ended up disappointed, didn't we? Because it was like the more concrete the answers were given to us, the less we actually believed in them. So this is the third week of Lent, or as I like to consider it, it's the third week of the season of metanoia. Instead of it being a time of penance and punishment, or, we give something up in hopes to purify ourselves or to create some humble devotion, the season, the concept, the idea of metanoia that Jesus says to metanoia, it's to now choose a healthy direction where the currents of God's Spirit are flowing. Metanoia is this idea where we awaken our mind, where we feel humility towards the sacred, where we even feel real grief, real remorse, not shame, but real grief, real remorse to fix, approach, turn something around that's unhealthy, and where we can even go beyond in a perspective that we currently have. So last week we looked at Luke 13, and I'm going to return to a story that I referred to last week. Let me just jump in, and then I'll speak about what this story means and how we need to trash certain kind of questions. About this time, Jesus was told that Pilate had given orders for some people from Galilee to be killed while they were offering sacrifices. So Jesus' friends come and give him this news, and we get no reason why Pilate did this, but what we do know is the tension between the Jews and the Roman occupiers, that always ran high. There were plenty of revolts at the time, and specifically from the Jews from Galilee, which is Jesus' home region. But after Jesus gets this news, he addresses these folks about a common thought of the day that they're asking about, which is this: boy, when trouble comes to a person, it certainly can't be happenstance. There has to be a reason for it, right, Jesus? And it's probably because they were really bad, really sinful. So Jesus steps in. Jesus replied, "Do you think that these people were worse sinners than everyone else in Galilee just because of what happened to them? Of course not. But listen, if you do not consider God's ways or change direction, then friends, you will also die." Speaking of current events, you've all heard about the 18 people killed in that building accident when the Tower of Siloam fell. Were they extraordinarily bad people, worse than anyone else in Jerusalem, so that they would deserve such an untimely death? Of course not. But all the buildings of Jerusalem will come crashing down on you if you don't wake up and change directions. So first, what Jesus is definitely emphasizing here is he wants them to know without a doubt, God never causes harm to come to someone because of their behavior or because they're really a sinful person. He doesn't do that. What Jesus is emphasizing here is metanoia, that concept, that listen, all people, no matter who they are, they all need to metanoia. They all need to wake up and turn and go beyond towards spiritual life. They need to avoid spiritual death because we all need spiritual life. The second thing I notice in this passage comes from the question askers, and it's something oh so human. It's this ever wondering of why. When we can't explain something, we have to come up with a reason, right? We have to make sense, so we come up with solutions and answers for our chaotic world. And when you look at the Gospels, Jesus seems to spend little time expounding on this oh so human question of why. And it's probably because it just oh so goes with the territory of being human. Life happens. As people, we are vulnerable to misfortune and unfairness. When we are afraid, we're even capable of moving towards vengeance or power or greed or evil, right? The poet Padraig Otama, in his book, In the Shelter, he introduces us to this Eastern concept of mu, or mu. I'll just call it mu. Have you ever heard of it? Mu is this concept of unasking. If someone asks a question that's too small, too confining, Otama writes, well then respond with mu. Unask the question. Why? Because there's a better question to be asked. There's a wiser question, a deeper question, a truer question, a question that expands possibility or goes beyond that possibility, a question that can actually transform your mind, move you to love and resist fear. And it's in this conversation between Jesus and his disciples, there seems to be a whole lot of mu going on. Jesus seems to like mu. It seems very near and dear to his heart. And often when Jesus is asked a question, he doesn't answer it. When Jesus is asked a question, he poses another question, and that's maybe to reveal their hypocrisy or their insincerity or agenda, or to move them towards an even better, deeper question. We're the ones that want to pin Jesus down, pin God down for answers, aren't we? We're the ones who have developed these religious subcultures, these doctrinal constructs that need to emphasize answers and emphasize the right answer. But Jesus' response, his response is mu. Ask a better question. I love what Reverend Debbie Thomas points out in this passage. When we ask our questions, we often we have the answer in mind. We already have a preferred answer. And in this story, it seems like these question askers, they don't seem to be starting with a blank slate. They come expecting Jesus to verify what they already believe. We so do the same. But Jesus challenges them with metanoia. Again, in English, repent. Perhaps what Christ is trying to point out is when you ask a question that give you a sanitized distance from understanding what's really going on in someone's life, then move to the questions that are dualistic, right or wrong questions that reduce Christian spirituality to these pat answers, and actually open up your hearts. Ask questions that attach your heart and love to God. When we wax on about what we believe, our creeds, and especially if what we believe is about a God of love, and then at the same time of espousing our love, we exclude people from that love because they have a different belief or a different take on the subculture's construct. It's like Jesus is saying, move to that. Ask a different question. Why? Because those kind of questions are mired in irrelevance. You're actually losing your life by trying to keep it through the certainty of your answers. Ask a different question, braver questions, more open questions, more challenging questions, questions that have us turn and go beyond. So, okay, what leads us to better questions? Well, I'm not going to give you those questions, but I will talk about 4 things that lead us to those questions. The first one is learn the stories of how people look at things. Practice active listening. Value silence. When I hear the story of how someone experienced life, and then why they're asking the questions they do of God, of faith, of life itself, it causes me to start asking deeper questions myself, or I start to learn that my answers, they only fit my viewpoint, not theirs. You know, in the kind of Christian ecosystem that I was nurtured in, then became a minister of, when I started to hear the stories of how women were not equalized, when gay people were excluded, or when non-white people were marginalized, or how people who had a sincere devotion to God suddenly didn't fit the norms and give the same answers in those in the same subculture construct, I knew I had to start asking different questions. When I started to hear the stories of different ministers and pastors and theologians, smart thinkers, when I started to hear the stories from therapists who were gifted empathizers and gifted feelers, when I sat in a 12-step program myself for a year and a half and began to hear the stories of struggle and addiction and relational bust-ups and church hurt and God damage, I knew I wasn't asking the right questions, and I knew my answers wouldn't fit. So learn the stories of how others look at things, feel things. Ask better questions that transform you. Here's the second thing that leads us to asking better questions. Develop a curiosity-driven theology. I love this. How? By abandoning your answer-driven doctrine. Listen, SPERO DEI is partly built on theological curiosity. I love this. And the great thing about a curiosity-driven theology, well, it can include both the head and the heart. If it's just answers and doctrine, it's just the head and misses the heart. And more than answers, Jesus would always use questions to awaken people to their reality of their heart, the reality of their needs, the reality of their brokenness, the reality of a heart they wanted connected to God. And I love what author Matt Taibbi says. Christian spirituality should be the rigorous commitment to reality, yet a faith that has to have an answer for everything, a faith that's just stuck in hyperbolic supernaturalism, verse quoting literalism. It just can keep us so distant from reality. And when our religion numbs us to reality, it ceases to be a useful religion. Jesus, to me at least, and you don't have to agree with me, it seems he wants his followers to avoid all of that. In fact, in one of his final prayers from the Gospel of John, he prays to his Father and he says, don't take them out of this world, but protect them in it and keep them in the world so they can bring the trueness of who you are to it. So you have the permission to be curious about what people tell you and when they tell you what to believe. You're allowed to watch out for answers that hide behind pat supernaturalism and unchangeable literalism. You're allowed to welcome reality in a way that brings new questions to your faith and brings new healing to you and to others. So here's the third one. Undo your binary perspective by not making everything either or. If we're going to experience God not as opiates of our religious fantasies or our religious rigid literalism, or sometimes our own self-denial and faith escapism, which can come from dualistic absolutes, it produces that which is so enveloped in the type of Christianity very prevalent in our day, then we're going to have to undo this either-or perspective. So, consider the kind of questions you are asking. Are they questions that they're just, you're asking questions just to give you assurance, security, direction? I get that that's human, but are they questions that bring inward probing? Are they questions that wake you up? Questions that attune your heart to love and create greater love? Jesus, when he asked questions, they always went to the heart of the people. What do you want me to do for you? Do you want to get well? Can you drink the cup I drink? Why do you call me good? Who do you say I am? Those questions go right to people's hearts. And Jesus asked questions for different reasons than we often do. When we ask questions, it's because we need security, or we need to know what's right or what's wrong, what's correct, what's not correct. Is this biblical or unbiblical? What does the Bible say about this or that? These are our dualistic either-or questions. We ask questions for information and direction. We need questions that answer moral clarity completely. And when we ask questions like that, we end up producing a Christianity like that, and we end up producing Christians like that. People who are very moralistic people who can be very judgy people who are stuck in a rigid mold, people that don't expand and evolve. Listen, here's where I found hope. I have gotten this ironic hope from being curious about mystery. Mystery and being curious, it always fuels openness. It always fuels acceptance versus staid, rigid answers. And I just got to be honest with you. The older I grow in my faith, I find the certainty of answers, I find that less interesting. It kind of seems boring and uncreative to me. It ends up producing a God, a small God that looks just like me. Listen, we need to learn two Hebrew terms. We need to learn to live in yesh and ayin. Yesh is this Hebrew term that means isness or somethingness. Yesh refers to everything in creation. Yesh is anything that has a beginning and an end, has a definition. Yesh is about spatial reality, what's real. Yesh is good. Why? Because you can see it, you can touch it. We live in a world of yesh. You watching me is yesh. Yesh is not bad unless it forgets what ayin is. Yesh is not everything. There is something else. So be curious about ayin. Ayin is literally without end. Ayin means nothing with a capital N. God is both yesh, something, and he's nothing at the same time. So there is more to a binary perspective about God, about life. So ask questions that unravel both. Okay, so number 4, be led by love, by really examining if you're asking questions that are led by fear. Become more aware of that. Listen, do I ask questions that expand my soul towards love? Or am I asking questions that protect my fragile ego, my fragile faith with fear? If the kind of questions I ask give me the kind of answers that only protect me and secure me, then these kind of questions and answers, they're literally about reducing something, aren't they? Fear-oriented faith produces an insecure ego. And we might not even be aware of it. But when our faith is about definitions and doctrines and isms and ologies, it's just a faith that craves security, and it becomes very fragile. But for some of you, you discovered that, right? You're discovering that you need something new. Something different started to awaken in you. The kind of approach of faith, that kind of approach to faith, I should say, it seemed shallow to you. But love, your soul, you know it is not formed by contraction. You are formed by openness and growth. And you are formed by a deep self-awareness and a deep God attachment. The fragile ego, the fragile faith, it pulls into itself. It secures itself. But the soul, when it's growing, it's so self-aware that it's not even focused on the self. Moo-type questions, they prevent us from reduction. Moo-type questions expand us. Finally, I want to say something about mystery and contradiction. How do you live in mystery? How do you live in contradiction? Well, just that. You live them. You don't endure them. You don't come up with answers to resolve them. You live them. And the times that we reckon our lives with contradictions, this often is the spiritual turning point of our life. This is what leads us into the deeper mystery of God. This is what leads us into a deeper relational attachment and trust in God. When there's forced, pat answers, that deadens real trust, real faith, right? And so many times we come up with these rational answers, and then we call that belief. And mystery, let me say this about mystery. You can know mystery. Mystery is knowable. In fact, mystery is endless knowability. This is what gives us support in this unrestricted love, this eternal care. And listen, I can't prove this to you. You have to live it to know it. But you and I can know the mystery of God. And when you're experiencing that, your heart is expanding. So let's move. Let's trash the questions that lead us to all these specific answers that reduce our heart. And let's unask the questions that lead us to deeper, better questions that expand our heart and lead us to a greater life and faith of love and hope. God, may we embrace and hold on to the mystery of you. Yes, you are Yesh, you are something. But you are also found in Ayin, nothing. And so may we have a faith that moves, that unasks questions that lead us to a smaller faith, that have to have an answer for everything, and lead us to unasked questions so that we could ask greater ones, questions that expand our heart and move us to greater and greater love. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
After all these years, I still love you. Through every single tear we've ever cried. 'Cause after all these years, I brought the two of us right here. No place I'd rather be after all these years.
move a mountain, takes a whole lot more to move a man set in his ways. But there's a way about you that leads me to redemption. You always keep me moving after all these years. And after all these years, I still love you. Through every single tear we've ever cried. 'Cause after all these years, it brought the two of us right here. No place I'd rather be after all these years.
Well, that's our service for today. I'm India Lacerda, and I'm the elementary director here at SPERO DEI. And if this service was meaningful to you, or if you're interested in getting a little bit more informed about what it is that we're doing as a community, you can go online on our website and sign up for our newsletter, or you can easily follow any of our social media channels to be able to kind of just track the things that we're doing and how our community is growing. To those of you who have contributed to that growth through finances, we want to say a huge thank you, because that helps us in the day-to-day operations of keeping this community expanding. And to those of you who maybe haven't had a chance to get to give yet, you can easily go on our website. There's a tab on the right-hand side which says Give Here, and it's safe and secure for you to do so. So thank you so much. We hope to get to see you next week.